It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. We got a repeat guest on here, though it's been a long time. Spencer Holbrook joining us. Actually, he messaged me and was like, "Hey, I miss your intro so much. Can I please just come back on the podcast to talk about something?" No, jokes aside, obviously a couple of Ohio State guys drafted by the Steelers. We got Spencer here to talk about it. Spencer, how we doing?
Doing well. Glad to see a couple of Ohio State guys get drafted this weekend. You know, only 14 it's a decent weekend for the Buckeyes, but it's a decent weekend for Mike Tomlin making the case that he loves Ohio State. So, you know, I enjoy watching that.
Yeah. I made the joke, did they scout outside of the Big Ten? I mean, even Central Michigan, Alan pointed out, maybe he was at like Michigan or Michigan State's pro day, and that's how they even found out who he was. But yeah, very Big Ten draft this year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Spencer, like I said, was on here before. I just went back and realized it was a very different conversation. The first time we had Spencer on here was to talk about CJ Stroud during the second or third game of his or fourth game of his NFL career when the Steelers were facing him his rookie season, just to get an idea of what to expect. Yeah, we like CJ Stroud had not fully turned into CJ Stroud at that point. We were kind of downplaying what rookie CJ Stroud might look like. Not Spencer, but the two of us were downplaying what the Steelers were going to make him look like, and that did not turn out that way in that football game. Anyways, very different conversation to have with Spencer today, although one of those conversations will be about a quarterback. But Spencer, yeah, Jack Sawyer, Will Howard. Alan and I had mocked Will Howard to the Steelers a bunch through the process. We thought he was the most likely quarterback that they would target, you know, if they weren't going to go with one in the first round. Will Howard in the middle rounds made sense, but all the way in the sixth round isn't necessarily where I thought he'd go. I even mentioned to you, I thought that could have been, you know, that 124 where they ended up taking Jack Sawyer. Just talk about Will Howard a little bit, what you think the Steelers are getting in him as a player that I would say played his best ball down the stretch. I mean, his college football playoff is literally, to me, the best stretch that we saw of any quarterback that came out this year.
Yeah, he's a I hate the term, but I'll use it here. He's a gamer, man. Like, you put him on the field, you tell him it's a big moment, and as long as he's not injured, like he was in the Michigan game, and he probably shouldn't have been on the field, like, you're getting a great leader first and foremost. He is going to lead teams wherever he's at. He tried to lead Kansas State, and they really didn't at times as much want him to. There were times where he was cast off at Kansas State, and so there was a mutual parting of ways there. So he comes to Ohio State, and people say, oh, the guy who's going to be the backup at Kansas State is going to be the guy to take Ohio State to a national championship. Okay, sure. And it was like, no, like there's something here. Ryan Day, his quarterbacks are not just slouches. And he comes in, he immediately takes over in a leadership role on a team that had every guy that could have went to the NFL came back to be a leader. Will Howard was one of the leaders of this team, along with Jack Sawyer, who we'll talk about later. But you know, the leadership is what, you know, it doesn't matter as much in the NFL, but if you need, you know, we've seen franchises all the time, Stroud included, like you just get the quarterback right and the franchise takes off. And I'm not saying
look at how quickly Washington turned around, dude. Like no one was talking about the Commanders 2 years ago.
Correct. And so like, I'm not saying that a 6th round pick is going to do that, but I also don't think that Will Howard was worthy of a 6th round pick. I thought he was a 3rd or 4th round guy. And I think Alan would agree. Like his pro day looked like a 3rd or 4th round pro day. It did not look like a late round flyer pro day. I thought he was accurate. He was on time. He had command. The zip on the ball is better than people realize. Like you said, when he started settling in there in the college football playoff, turned a new leaf after the regular season, Zach, like he was on. And I would caution anyone to doubt this guy just because of the mentality, the way that he works, the hunger that he brings, the intangibles that he has. But then also, like, you need a throw on 3rd down, he's going to put it there. And I know he had great weapons, but man, like, it's hard to deny those last 4 games. You throw on the film, it's not just one game, it's not just one drive. Like, it was games, plural, against the best defenses that college football had to throw at him. And he was kind of dialed in for those 4 games. It was impressive.
Yeah, I kind of understand a bit of skepticism about his senior season. I mean, because it's a big outlier compared to what he'd done before. Completion percentage in the 50s for most of his time at Kansas State jumps up to 73. 35 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, and you go, okay, how much of this is Will Howard getting better, and how much of it was just throwing to God tier wide receivers now, and like there's anybody could do it, not anybody, but like those guys could make anybody look good. How about that? And so I understand some skepticism, but I think that starts to fall apart when you look at, like, it's very obvious how he improved even over the course of that senior season, how much better he got from the beginning to the end. Spencer, what do you think clicked, or what changed from the start of the season to the end of the season that he was playing so much better by the end of it?
Well, first of all, I think the run game improved, and this is an Ohio State conversation, but Chip Kelly kind of dialed in a little bit more and made Will Howard more comfortable in the system. Remember, this is not a Ryan Day system. Everybody wants to say, well, in a Ryan Day system, the receivers are wide open. And yeah, the receivers were great. This is a Chip Kelly offense. Chip Kelly challenges his quarterbacks. He makes sure that they understand the full playbook. I think that month between the Michigan game and the Tennessee game, when he really took off, you saw him get a better understanding of the playbook. I think they tweaked a little bit with his footwork that made him a more accurate and settled in passer. If you watch the Michigan State game from September, when he was decent, but you wouldn't say that he was amazing. You watch the Iowa game where he was good, but you wouldn't say he was great. Compared to the Tennessee game and the Oregon game, yeah, guys were WTFO, but also like he's delivering on time. He's in rhythm. He's more accurate. I think just settled in more, and the footwork is, Ryan Day said before Will Howard's pro day, when I think he said it actually, yeah, it was the national championship post-game press conference. I think they were all either still drunk or hungover. And Ryan Day was up at the podium and he said, when Will Howard's feet are right, he's one of the best I've ever been around. Go watch September and October, and when he was good but not great. Go watch January when they had 4 weeks to kind of dissect everything that they had seen across 12 games. They got that footwork right. And all of a sudden it was, oh my gosh, this guy's going to win them a national championship. They're not going to win with Will Howard. They're going to win in part because of Will Howard and the way that he was delivering the ball. I think that's where it excites me the most. And, whether you trust Tom Arth, whether you trust Arthur Smith, whether you trust this coaching staff to continue that development is another question. But the idea that, everybody was just open and he was just throwing the ball, well, there was a leap from him, even with those same weapons in that month. And I think you can attribute it directly to the mechanics that were tweaked ever so slightly that maybe you don't recognize unless you're a ball knower, that really set him apart in the playoff.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the fit with the Steelers, because I don't know if I know, obviously, the audience, Spencer is a Steelers fan. So on this podcast, we have a Steelers writer, a Steelers fan, an Ohio State fan, a Steelers fan, and an Ohio State writer among the three of us. Got that. All the boxes are checked there. What do you make of the fit specifically with the Steelers? Do you feel like this is a good landing spot for him? Smitty and I have been talking for weeks about our questioning of the ability of this coaching staff to develop a young quarterback. Do you think this is going to work?
Do I think it's going to work? I think that is a loaded question based on the run game. Do we think I don't know, you guys, do you guys think the run game is going to work?
I think Caleb Johnson's sort of coordinator proof personally. Like, I don't see how you can screw that up.
Yeah, I think he's
and I have faith in a leap from the offensive line. And I think it's more so in the run blocking than pass protection.
Okay, so if we trust the development of this run game under Arthur Smith, and we trust that Arthur Smith isn't going to take the floaties off and just throw him in the water week one and say, hey, this guy's going to be our starter, and if he sucks, we're just going to bench him and we'll never see him again. Even if he goes 4-2, we might bench him for a guy that's not any good. Whatever. Not mad about Justin Fields at all from last year, but whatever. I think it can work. I really do. I don't expect him to win the job week one. If he does, I think it's just a bonus, because that means that he's beaten out Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson, but also probably another elephant in the room. I don't think that's going to happen if they sign Aaron Rodgers. But like, if you give Will Howard a year to develop, and so many NFL teams don't want to do that anymore. But like, the Steelers are not so many NFL teams. That's why they're almost recession-proof in the league. I think that it can work. If you give him a run game and you trust the offensive line development, and you trust that he's going to continue to get better because of your coaching staff, not in spite of your coaching staff, then I think yes. But if you feed him to the wolves, or you put him in a situation that's not advantageous to him, then you're probably going to get 6th round results from a 6th round quarterback. And I think it's kind of as simple as that. I don't mean to reduce it so much, but also like there's only so much that a player can do once he gets to the NFL. He can keep getting better. But if the coaching staff isn't going to put him in position to, and I think that's where Ryan Day and Chip Kelly worked him so well into everything. Then by the time they had that month off in the playoff, they said, okay, here's what we need to correct. Here's what we need to adjust. And then you saw him take off. That can be done at the next level. Okay, we took this guy who's a 6th-round quarterback. We make him into something good. So I'm cautiously optimistic. But based on everything I know about Will, and I was telling Zach before the show, like I do know Will, and maybe Will's listen to this. Hey, Will, I do know Will well enough. Like he's going to work. He's not going to rest on this, and he's going to not only use 6th round as fuel, but use hey, I can be the Steelers starting quarterback. I'm from Pennsylvania. Like that's going to be fuel for him, and I'm excited for him. And I think it can work.
Yeah, I saw this kind of just speaks to, the work ethic, if you will. I saw Devin Jackson, who is one of my favorite, like in terms of covering the league. He writes for the Philly Inquirer, put out a thing though. He talked to Will Howard's mother, actually, like right after he got drafted, just asking about Will and his mindset and stuff, but also included in there, like immediately after the selection, he got on the phone with Tom Arth and was like, hey, I need the play installs. Like this dude is just attacking it immediately upon being drafted. I think that just goes to speak to the work ethic. But he was just one of 2 Ohio State players that was selected by the Pittsburgh Steelers in this draft. The other one we mentioned was Jack Sawyer, which I don't know. I mean, from a team player fit, it's certainly like he feels like a Steeler, right? We've talked about that. In terms of like the need there, that's what left Alan and I, scratching our heads a little bit. Could they have used that on like an Iomanor, a big receiver, when they still had the need out there, like another body in that receiver room? A slot corner, also a direction that they could have gone. But going with Jack Sawyer certainly made sense. More edge depth there. Spencer, what do we make of this other guy, which I would say is kind of like for the Will Howard, that what Will Howard was on the offensive side, Jack Sawyer kind of was that for the defense.
Yeah, I went to bed on Friday night wondering how Jack Sawyer was still available. I could not figure out how he went past the 3rd round. I still don't really understand, but the Steelers' gain is everybody else's potential pain. Another guy that is going to work his absolute tail off, and you said about all these NFL guys, they're in the NFL for God's sakes, but like Jack is everything that you wanted, like from a 2009 to 2013 Pittsburgh Steeler. Like, let's get back to the Super Bowl winning days. Like, hey, Jack Sawyer, sign him up. Like that, it's perfect. I think that this is like the best fit of any Ohio State player in the entire draft, other than Emeka Egbuka, because it's an Ohio State wide receiver. Like, of course he's going to do well. But like Jack, he needed to go to a system that's going to thrive. Is he a 4-3 defensive end in the NFL? I don't think so. Is he a 3-4 outside linebacker in the NFL? Absolutely. And I think he turns speed to power well. I think if you watch, it's easy to say like, hey, just watch the sacks because that's the best plays of their career. But the way that he gets to the quarterback is more than just like, hey, he got a sack there. It's like, okay, he's using all the tools in what defensive line coach Larry Johnson calls his toolbox. And Cam Hayward has studied under Larry Johnson some as he's come back to the program throughout the years. I think Jack is going to learn a lot from Cam, even though Cam doesn't play the same position. And then obviously having Alex to learn from, having TJ to learn from, having Herbig to learn from, like he's going to be able to be a sponge. And I think that's one of the good things about Jack is like, he's not afraid to be a sponge. He came in with a fellow 5-star defensive end who played over him as a freshman. So like JT Tuimoloau was playing more snaps than Jack Sawyer was as a freshman. Jack just continued to work. And by the time Jack was a sophomore, he was a rotational guy in this defense. And he looked pretty good because not only was he learning from Larry Johnson, but he was learning from the guy that he came in with, who was a more, polished pass rusher coming out of high school than he was. Well, it's the same thing here. He's not going to be asked to start right away, but he's going to be able to sponge from those guys that we already mentioned and then start to apply that along with the training that he's going to fall back on from the best defensive line coach in college football the last 20 years. So I think that this is a great fit. I think it's a home run for not just Jack, but for the Steelers. And I think Jack is going to be one of those guys we look back and he's going to have one of those Pro Bowl little cross things by his Wikipedia page. And we're like, how did so many edges go before this guy? Like this guy, he's a couple-time Pro Bowler, good player for the Steelers. And a lot of teams are going to be angry that they passed on him, I think, in the 2nd and 3rd round.
He's a great player and a good run defender. And I think that's like what he can bring to the table right away. that's not really Herbig's forte in terms of the depth options at outside linebacker. The reason I question this pick is, and you talked about it, him being a guy who had to sit, early in his college career. I mean, look, TJ Watt played 86% of snaps last year and wasn't healthy. What, I mean, if TJ's playing 90%, where are the snap? And it's not like TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Nick Herbig aren't all parts of this team's future plans. I mean, at least for the next 2 seasons and probably more than that. So it's I feel like this is a slow burn pick, where I like the player, but it might be 2 years before you really get to see him very much. Now, I mean, maybe, I don't know, TJ gets hurt and whatever. That's certainly possible, but I think this is a pick that is definitely value over need. And that's one of those things that everybody always wants to pound the table for in the draft until you draft a guy and then never get to use him because you don't need him. And then it looks dumb and frustrating. So I don't know. We'll see how this goes. I'm interested to see what happens. I think he's a really good player. And like you said, a second round pick value easily taken in the 4th round is nothing to sneeze at. I was just a bit confused when I saw edge rusher come up because that was the one. I didn't even have it on my board. I didn't think they even needed one at all, let alone in the 4th round.
Well, to me, it was you're going to love this Jack Sawyer pick for the value until Calvin Austin regresses back to the mean and Roman Wilson doesn't pan out. And then you're sitting there without a couple of good receivers.
George Pickens holds out or whatever.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. There's plenty of places where, and there was other depth on the board. Like Smitty mentioned, Amonor, Marcus Embo, the guard from Purdue, that's an Isaac Seumalo replacement in a year if you draft him. I think there were plenty of guys where it's a lot easier to see their path to making an impact on the roster. Now, that doesn't mean they're better players. I just think this is and look, maybe the Steelers are going to change their stripes. Maybe they're going to come out here and TJ Watt's going to play 65% of snaps this year. In which case, great. If that's the plan, I'm all for it. I think that's probably a good idea, but that's not the way they've operated to this point.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. And if that's the case, then that means that Jack has made a push to where TJ doesn't have to play every snap and he can be more effective on the snaps that he does, in which case, great for Jack, great for the development that he went through on my side of things, and great for the future of this defensive line. But I also question it. There was a guy from Ohio State on the board that I thought that was a perfect fit for the Steelers. He reminded me of what Cam Sutton was immediately in the slot for the Steelers when he first came into the league, and that was Jordan Hancock, who went in the 5th round of the Bills. I thought that he was a perfect fit for the Steelers, kind of fit, not necessarily the biggest position of absolute need, but I think that he is going to step in and either start over DeMar Hamlin or start in the slot for the Bills. And as a 5th round pick, because I think he's that good and that explosive, I was that is a perfect pick for the Steelers. He's also a quieter guy. And then when it was Jack, I was well, I think that it fits as long as he is good enough to be on the field. And I ultimately think he will be. But like you said, value over need. But when the value means that you're not going to see this guy on the field for maybe a year and a half, maybe if his 2nd year he starts to push, I think that would be a good addition. But his rookie year, you might not see the returns on this investment right away. But then again, you've got him for 4 years, and we'll see what happens.
Especially, should have picked Hancock so that the Bills couldn't disrespect him. Did you see the graphic they put out? It had him listed as a defensive lineman. I was that's not true.
That's light.
It's very undersized.
Real quick before we get out of here, Spencer, just because you are also a Steelers fan, we talked about the 2 Ohio State picks, but the rest of the draft, what did you make of their other selections?
Yeah, I mean, I heard Derek Harmon's name, and I was super excited just because I watched Derek Harmon twice last year, and once it was non-competitive because Oregon just no-showed at the Rose Bowl for some reason, and the other one was, I think, the best game of Derek Harmon's career. I'm sure that you guys will talk about him at length a lot more. I absolutely loved that pick. Just, you want a Cam Hayward replacement, but he's not going to play forever. I think Derek is going to be a really good player. And then Caleb Johnson, maybe not my top running back on the board, but I mean, if you need somebody to play the Arthur Smith, Derrick Henry role, he's not Derrick Henry, but he is maybe a toddler version of Derrick Henry. And I still think that's an added bonus to this offense, just a bruising running back. I thought that the perfect Steelers running back here was Judkins. He was never going to last to them, and there was no reason to take him at 21. But I really did like the Caleb Johnson pick just because, At that point, I thought there's no reason he should still be there. So you might as well bring him in almost like Jack with the value, but also I think you're going to see the return on that investment much earlier. And so those are my core four. There is Howard, Johnson, Sawyer, and then Harmon. Like, the rest of the guys, like, I'm fine with the draft overall, but those four guys like pique my interest, not just because of the Ohio State angle and not just because I saw Caleb Johnson have an 80-yard touchdown run against one of the best defensive lines I've ever seen in October. But Harmon, very good player. Johnson, very good player. And then the Ohio State guys, I think, will take care of themselves.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Spencer, of course, before we get out of here, tell the people where they can find you and get all your work.
I think it's down here. At Spencer Holbrook on Twitter. We're over at LettermanRow.com if you want Ohio State coverage, or if you want to read about, who Penn State's going to lose to in November in Columbus, like, that's fine. You can come check us out over at LettermanRow.com.
You'll just know who the Steelers are going to be obsessed with in the 2026 NFL draft ahead of time.
It's either going to be Drew Aller, the next Penn State edge rusher, or an Ohio State guy. It's pretty basic there.
Yeah, it's a good list. It's a good list.
There we go. Well, good stuff, Spencer. We appreciate you joining us yet again, and we'll get you back on here next year when we draft another couple Ohio State guys.
Sounds great, guys. Thanks for having me.
All righty. Spencer Holbrook, thanks again for joining the podcast. Alan, before we go any further, I got to do what I always got to do when it's just two of us. Bang, turf's back in the back.
There you go. Boom. Yep. All right.
Also, I will say, much easier podcast to record today. We were fighting it yesterday. Honestly, a mini miracle that we were able
really
to
appreciate everyone's patience. I had to make the decision to go with the cell phone internet because my lights were flickering the whole time. So it was a little bit laggy, but we made it work. Appreciate Tom. Spencer, two great guests so far this week.
I didn't say anything in the moment, and I was just hoping that it all sounded like good when it came out. But like something was going on with my headphones yesterday because of the whole power thing. And like every other word I wasn't hearing. So honestly, mini miracle that yesterday's podcast even turned out as good as it came out. And that's with the last, 10, 15 minutes or so, you operating on your phone's Wi-Fi. But yeah, a couple of great guests so far to kick off the week here, and we'll see if we can get somebody to give us some more on Derek Harmon. Obviously, Spencer with a little bit of knowledge on Derek Harmon, seeing him play within the Big Ten. Alan, I want to follow up kind of on what your morning rush was, just because, the George Pickens stuff, I've seen a couple people throw me the idea that they want him to get extended. I've had people say they want to deal him now, or they should have dealt him during the draft. I don't know that, there's always polarizing topics within here. There's people that don't want Aaron Rodgers, people that do want Aaron Rodgers, but even just going through the comments of that episode, it seems like a 1-to-1 ratio of people that are like, give him an extension or trade him now. And I guess my question, why I said I want to expand upon that, is, did you expect that it would be that polarizing of a topic? Do you think that this is something that should be this much made about it, or, hey, the draft is passed, George Pickens is on the team, that should be the end of the story?
I thought it was a good question because I didn't think really anybody's talked about I think there's been a lot of questions about whether the Steelers should want to sign George Pickens. I think that topic has been broached a good bit. I'm not sure a lot of people have discussed what that contract would look like. And I thought that's why it was a good question.
Well, so I brought up to you the idea of that short-term deal, and we were trying to debate if that's even something he would be interested in, or where that would go. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen a ton of people discuss that aspect of it, if that makes sense. And I don't know that he would go for it, but the number that you mentioned is probably within the ballpark, right? Like a $25 million-ish contract. But what do you think in terms of the term?
I mean, I would think 3 years feels like a sweet spot, but it's so much of that is really determined by what the player wants. What do they want? The big number? Do they want the security of extra years? There's so many different ways you can do it. So until they really start talking, and as far as I can tell, they haven't. It's hard to really know.
Also, I don't know if this is still related to anything that's been going on with the internet. I don't think so. Everything else is working for me, but I cannot load YouTube comments right now on my computer because I was trying to find another question.
I got a whole bunch. You want me to read something? All right, well, I'll take over. Yeah. Zach Howell wants to know, am I missing something? Doesn't the team normally bring in all the rookies by now for a press conference? No, usually the only ones that come in are the first round picks. And obviously Derek Harmon chose not to have one after the death of his mother. and understandably, obviously. And then the last 2 years, they had their second round pick in, but that was just because Joey Porter Jr. and Zach Frazier live a combined hour and 15 minutes from the South Side, not because they always bring in the day 2 and day 3 picks. So, no, the rest of those guys will all be in Pittsburgh for the first time over rookie minicamp, which starts next Friday. Got another one here from Thomas Brocious. What's your opinion on the Steelers smoke screen? Do you think Derek Harmon would have still been the pick if the other teams knew that it was D, tackle, or bust? Would another team have traded up to get in front of them? That's a good question. I don't think it made any difference at all.
Yeah, I kind of get the sense afterwards. It's funny having conversations with people beforehand as opposed to afterhand, the, type of information they get. And I get it. But I feel like Derek Harmon was always the guy. Like, if he was on the board, that was 100% going to be the pick. I don't know what that board would have had to have looked like for them to have considered going a different direction, whether that means a different prospect falling, or if Derek Harmon wasn't on the board, what direction they would have went. Maybe that's the scenario where we would have gotten that trade down. But Derek Harmon was just like zero interest in trading down type of player if he was on the board. But yeah, I mean, people that I've talked to 100% get the sense that Derek Harmon was the guy all along. I wouldn't have been wouldn't surprise me if they had him rated higher than the defensive lineman that won even ahead of him. Like, even if they were all
I think he was their favorite of those 3.
Yeah. If they were all there, I think Derek Harmon's still the pick.
I agree. I maybe trade back because there isn't that big of a difference between them, but I think if they had to pick between one of those 3 D tackles, Harmon, Grant, Nolan, I think they would have taken Harmon.
Mm-hmm. Which I can appreciate, the process and what's the word I'm looking for? Just like how strongly they feel the conviction of the pick, because I think that was the one thing for me where I didn't want them to go quarterback if they didn't have the idea of trading back and still taking a quarterback there was odd to me, just because I understand if you can do it, then sure, do it. But that also to me lacks the conviction that I feel like is necessary if you're putting that stamp on taking what you feel like is a franchise quarterback. You know what I mean? So I appreciate the conviction of the Derek Harmon pick as well.
I don't think anybody thinks they're getting a franchise quarterback at the end of the first round, but maybe we'll see. We got another one here from Desert Cactus. We're just playing all the hits today. We're getting all the regulars.
Yeah, this is all the.
He wants to know, if you look at the Steelers depth chart, there's one position that is drastically below par in terms of quality, and it's not quarterback, which is an interesting. I think he's leaving out quarterback here. Slot corner. I agree. It's below. Yeah. It's below par probably. I don't know about drastically. It's definitely not the only one. If you look at the available free agents out there, one name really jumps out to me at least. Why not bring Mike Hilton back? Let him teach Beanie his style of play. Your thoughts on a Mike Hilton reunion?
I mean, I wouldn't shut the door on it. I don't know. I'm curious to see if the organization would be open to it. I mean, again, it's a difference. Obviously Tomlin's still here, but Omar Khan, I know he was in the organization before. He was not here when Mike Hilton left and everything like that. Andy Weidel wasn't here. There's been obviously some personnel changes and stuff like that. I mean, I'd be open to it. I'm not sure that the organization would be, but if they would be, I wouldn't shut it down right away. I guess my question is, with what they'd be looking for in the slot, do they still have that great of a need for him, or should they go with a player that, because Mike Hilton's strong suit was never necessarily being a great coverage player.
No,
was really good in run support
from the slot. Mm-hmm. An okay coverage guy, got better, but I think he's a better player than Brandon Eccles. But they already signed Brandon Eccles, so I don't really know what to do with that. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I'd rather have Asante Samuel than Mike.
I was just gonna say that. I know that the snaps are limited in the slot, but I think you can get creative with it, and I think he's better. Yeah. To be honest, the fact he's still out there, I know a lot of people
that. He's like a Cam Sutton. Yep, that's what I was going to say. He's only third round. You would need, but I think Sebastian Castro has a little Mike Hilton in him. Okay, I think he can play the Mike Hilton run down slot role as a bigger body guy.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think they want to they don't want to shut the door on Beanie Bishop having a role either. But if I'm bringing in somebody,
he's so small that he can't do everything. You have to have somebody else there with him. And not that, look, even when they had Hilton, they had Sutton, right? They've always had somebody else. But I think that's why the question
pass down nickel
brought up. Yeah, I think Castro, Beanie, Eccles has enough juice that I'm not like fretting that position right now.
Okay, so I know
And
that
Dante Kent is like probably probably going to the practice squad would be my guess, but like he's got some tools. There's some pieces of the puzzle to work with there.
So if we're going to say, specifically slot corner, I feel like that allows me to say specifically outside receiver. I have questions about the depth.
Just because Robert Woods, we haven't really talked too much about his signing, but
because we've had a couple guests on obviously since then. But yeah, it was like right after the podcast Monday he signs, and obviously the last couple of days we've had a guest on. But we'll see about Robert Woods. I think he is. I think he's a really good blocker. He's going to fill that Allen Robinson, Van Jefferson role, not have to play as many snaps, obviously. I think to be a really good power slot. So yeah, he offers some insurance there, but like, again, I get now he changes the name that you're putting in there, but like if DK Metcalf or George Pickens are down for a period of time, I just don't love what we have in terms of, proven outside receiver options there, even with the inclusion of Robert Woods on the roster. So I would say that's kind of up there for me as well with slot corner, where I have some questions. One injury to me really changes the math on what that looks like.
Yeah. I don't think Robert Woods is really is he better as a backup outside receiver than Ben Skowronek and Scotty Miller? Yes.
Yeah.
Is he someone you're comfortable with starting if you have an injury there? Maybe. 3 years ago, yes. I don't really like the numbers are way down. And I can't say I've watched enough of his tape to know, is it just he was in a really deep group, didn't get used very much, still the same guy, it was just circumstance, or is it over? I don't know.
I don't think he's as athletically tapped as I feel like Allen Robinson was when he came here. But I mean, he's 32, 33. Like, of course that's going to happen. I feel like dependability more than anything else. Like, I think he can still be a medium yardage chain mover on third down, a security blanket. But, again, I think the big difference here to me in the way that I would look at it, if he had to step into a more prominent role, is obviously like that changes coverages. Like with George and DK, you feel pretty good about like, hey, you can't roll coverages to just one guy.
Nobody's afraid of Robert Woods.
Yeah. So I think that changes that in that way too, but we'll see how it plays out.
Speaking of first downs, 20 catches last year, 12 were for first downs.
Yeah.
So
I didn't know the numbers. I knew it was a high percentage. Yeah. So there we go. Anything else you wanted to check?
No, we got some more, but we got a show tomorrow. We got a guest tomorrow as well.
We do.
We got James from the Oregonian to talk about Derek Harmon. We're rolling them out, man. Just rolling.
The Oregonian. I like that name.
It's a good name.
Look forward to that conversation, diving more into Derek Harmon, and hope the audience is as well. Hope they've enjoyed hearing from Tom and Spencer over the last couple of days. Really good conversations. But Alan, until tomorrow, tell the people they can find you.
Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. PGH Steelers Now is the site's account, SteelersNow.com. Go there and read the words so I can get paid. Sign up for SN Plus. Read the words without ads, which is just way better in every way. And then get paid directly, and I can afford better internet. Someone said we need more SN Plus subscribers so I can have better internet. My internet's fine. It just I wasn't trusting it to stay on during the podcast, and I felt like that was better than that particular alternative. And of course, like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications here on the YouTube platform. That's free, helps us out a ton. Smitty and I always say, if everybody watching was subscribing, boy, would that be nice. 15,600 and Neil O'Donnell. They won 4.
Okay. I don't know that we've landed on 14 before, because I would have been wanting to break this name out. Shout out to Rochester, PA's Derek Moy.
Oh, there you go. That's better than you.
Dude, I watched him. I went to Monaca before we merged, became Central Valley. So like we used to play Rochester, which is where Derek went to high school. He scored 6 touchdowns in the first half of a game and then just didn't play the second half. So
there you go. They're still coaching. He was coaching at Western Beaver for a little bit.
Yeah.
He still is.
I believe so.
And we talked about Tevin Jones not too long ago. He was 14.
Yeah.
That's
certainly was.
there's some good wide receivers there. Neal was a rookie pick. I should have done better than that.
Let us know your favorite 14 in Steelers history, or at least most obscure. I think that's a better one than favorite because a lot of them probably will actually be good players, and that's not necessarily what we're searching for.
Yeah, I mean, you got George and Neal. I don't know if there's another good 14. Top, I don't know.
Yeah.
Ray was okay, I guess.
Yeah. So give us your favorite obscure Steeler in the comments that we're number 14. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. If you're listening somewhere else, leave us a 5-star review and subscribe over there. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get those from. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing on TikTok, and then you'll find me everywhere. Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in and taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.